Hello and greetings to the people who like quality of life features. This was one of the most requested features in Remnant 1 and 2, and now we have it, the ability to save our loadouts. The fun thing about this is that you can have 8 and you can actually save everything. It's a little bit finicky on the trade side, but that's to be expected. But the developers also changed the armor. They basically nerfed everything and made everything a little worse, and they nerfed this ring, which is now the dull steel ring. Instead of giving you a full dodge, now it only improves the dodge class by 1 weight class. So let's mouse over all of the builds. Again, these are general builds, general modes for the builds. But they mostly work as intended. You just need to modify them a little bit according to what you have. And I never really go for 100% damage or 100% defense. I mix them a little bit. So let's mouse over them so we can see them. There is also a lot of discussion about some other things, and I like to have complete information in my video. So first of all, let's speak about the things that will be very important for the builds themselves, and then we'll speak about the builds in details a little more. So this is the dodge roll I have right now. And as you can see, it's quite a bit of a difference. It can be a little bit like 50% dodge distance. But the problem is also the stamina, amount of stamina used. So if you're going to dodge in a heavy armor, you can only dodge about 3 times, because if you have max stamina, that's 4 times, but usually you will just run away, let's say once, dodge again, dodge again. And that's basically your entire stamina, so it's a big nerf, and you need to work around this a little bit, but it's not worth using any other types of armor, because they also nerf them as well. So for example, every armor now has its protection related to the weight. So because of the way the values were changed, some people complained that their builds, which let's say had 70 build, have 71 or 70.6, or anyway, the point is that they cross to the next weight class. So if you do all of the math, you'll go crazy, because imagine if you're just looking all of the helmets and all of the armors and all of the boots and all of the gloves and just think, okay, I need -2 weight, I need -1.5, no, I cannot make the build. Okay, so it's a little bit silly. Also, because of the trades work, you'll not really have a lot of choices. So let's go over the trade discussion, because most of the builds I'll show don't really have a lot of choice, because it's going to be mostly the same thing. The difference is very, very small. You'll always want vigor and endurance. In my opinion, you'll also always want fortify, which is for most of the builds anyway. And then you'll want siphoner. So we have 28 left, right? You always want spirit, and I think you more or less always will want expertise. It can depend on the build if you use your skills or not, but usually the skill is based on the archetype, which is based on the build. So you basically want to use your skill one more time in a battle, which is basically what this will do. I don't know, it's also very good. Some people just do the boss videos, but they don't really show how hard and painful it is to go through the world in apocalypse mode without a lot of support from your trades. So you might think, okay, so what else do you choose? Well, this is a big problem, because I really like bark skin as well. So these choices is the baseline. Some builds will require you have the blood bond and the rugged for summons. Some people will say that fitness is very, very good because it has the evasion distance, which I agree. Now it's really needed. The evasion distance is really needed right now, so you need the fitness. Some people say recovery is very good as well. I agree with that as well. If you're also farming, you might want the trait, the scholar, but that's not really going to work for most of the things we'll do. If you make them anyway, meta builds are not even going to enter the discussion, because they're not as useful or as fun. I would really like to also have the potency trait. At some point I was also always playing with the potency trait, but I had to give it up for one of these other choices. So this is the baseline for every possible build, except to the few exceptions, like you want to play the unkillable tank, you'll basically want the potency as well. Summons also will want this. For the dodgy builds or for whatever, you will want this. As for the melee weapons, again, there's not a lot of choice over here. You're going to use a melee weapon that can be thrown. If you don't have the World's Edge or the Hero Sword or whatever, just use the Hunter Spear or the Krill Axe. Most of the times you'll be using this with Shielded Strike, because it will give you a shield. Can be very fun to use, especially if you chain it with a lot of other stuff. But if you don't want this, you will want the Transference, which will give you some axe ammo Again, it's not so much, but it can be helpful in some situations. Now, also, let's speak about the consumables. Most of your build will affect some consumables, so I really like the way the grenades work because of that. So you can actually make bleed do a lot of damage if you just make the right bleed, and you can also apply the build with grenades. You can also apply fire, but again, it's not so important. As for the 1 hour consumables, you'll 90, let's say 90% of the time you'll use this one for more health. Otherwise, it will be the chilled steam for movement speed. Or additionally, you can use the Dark Sider, which has 6.6% in everything. Otherwise, not really much can be used. You can also use this one for a summoner build, which will increase your ranged and melee lifesteal, but it doesn't increase the summon's lifesteal. If I could use the trait, the potency trait, I'll definitely use a lot of things more often, like the blood roots, which will be amazing for a lot of builds, especially tanky ones. The mod power generation from the bottle shadeberry can really be useful in many times, but you're not going to be able to use them. So if you're going to introduce something to your build, it's probably going to be the ghoul serum or the fairy needle. And more or less the blood roots, in case you need extra healing, or you can apply it before the fight and when the boss is calmer, or you cannot attack the boss. Okay, now let's go to the builds themselves. That was a kind of a big discussion. So the number one will always be a build that you'll want to use on most difficulties. So again, this is not something you would use on the Apocalypse or Nightmare, but it's very useful to get through the game. You'll want this all the time almost if you're playing on a lower difficulty, because you always need extra crap. Heart of the Wolf is kind of like the best general trinket, the Timekeeper as well, this one as well. Not much to say about that. Most of the times we'll be using the Tech 22, the Firestorm and Feedback. Not much to say about that either. Twisting Wind is one of the best modes. Familiar is not so bad, it's not so good. You can replace the Familiar with your choice. But usually the mods are not so good unless you really spec towards them. You can change this for Stasis Beam as the most useful general mod. For the Song of Aethir, Grabshot also is great in many situations because it will slow down the enemies a lot, same as the Stasis Beam for that matter, or the Song of Aethir. And that's about it. A good general build for the first, the second, and sometimes even Nightmare difficulty, because it's very good at everything, but not in particularly perfect at anything else. I don't know, I just like to have something that is for all types of purposes. Anyway, most of the times I'll use a build to get to a certain boss, and then I'll use the boss build, which is kind of funny, but that's how it works. Second build is a bleeding build, more or less the same. As you can see, this heart will always be more or less the same. I haven't spoken about this in the general stuff, but I guess I can talk about it. So this will be the most used heart with either damage or defensive stuff. So armor, health and consumable use speed, or in case of a damage build, crit chance, range crit damage and range damage. Otherwise it will be the resonating heart with more or less the same thing, or even the salvage heart, just because you can use it a lot of times and it can be incorporated into the gunslinger builds much easier. Alternatively, there is the lifeless heart, or if you don't really have any of these, the shielded heart. Again, some of these are very niche and useful only for certain situations. I also like this one a lot more because it reduces the damage for 4 seconds, and again, it can save your life 100% over 0.5. And a big shout out to where is the seed? The blooming heart as well is going to be it's going to be very nice whatever you use. I also like the ripened heart a lot because it's basically healing over time as well, so you heal the damage you take, and then you can also get some regeneration in case you lose more health. What is the bleeding build about? It's abrasive whetstone, probability core. This is actually very good right now, so if you combine these two, it's actually going to be extremely well designed. You'll have a lot of regeneration, so you cannot really die. Twisting Wounds actually works with the bleed from the gun itself, so it stacks. I don't want to say something silly, but it might stack with the bleed from the grenades as well. I haven't tested in a long time. but it works very nicely. Of course, you can also change this to whatever you like. For example, you want just to make a very strong crit build. Well, okay. Replace this with a black AR. Have a bullet mode. Usually the corrosive one is my favorite. But actually, we can go for overflow, but I don't know. The corrosives are just too good because it increases the crit chance even more. And over here we'll have the momentum. Even more crit. Just a lot of crit all over the place. But you'll have to apply the bleeding with a grenade, with a pipe bomb. It's very good for bosses. Again, it works extremely well. And you can replace this with whatever else you like for damage. Amazing. Now, a second very good and useful build will be this one, which is basically the Summoner. This is for summon duration. It's incredible. Destroyer, Follower, and Souling. Now there's a little bit of a discussion about the Rude Lashes and the Familiars. The Familiar is not actually a summon. You can have about 8 Rude Lashes using this build and it works very well. Some of the things were nerfed, but they still work pretty well as well. Again, I'll not get into discussions, but if the boss is flying or you cannot attack it, the Familiar is great for damage all over. The Fargazer is also good for damage all over, especially when you have some cover in the level. You can damage it just by looking at it. Otherwise it will be the Space Crabs, which deal a lot more damage, but again, you don't really have a lot of options for summons as mods. So just change these 3 as much as you like. Just remember you can hit 8 tentacles, but the tentacles can sometimes bug out or don't attack certain bosses. It's very disappointing. This is the Charged Hugs build, which can do a lot of damage. As you can see, it uses the Supercharger and any weapon that charges, which is either the Crescent Moon Bow or the Deceit, or even the Alpha and Omega if you really want to use those, or the other bows. Again, even the Savior. The Savior is one of the guns that is very hard to get, but not really worth it in my opinion. Probability Core, Burden of the Follower as well. Sadly, you'll need it most of the times to regain the mod power as fast as possible. Archer Crest. Basically, your secondary will always be like this, but I haven't spoken a lot about this because your secondary can either be the Nebula with Nano Swarm and the feedback as well, but most of the times it doesn't really do enough damage in my opinion, so I mostly go for the Firestorm. Again, I forgot to mention this, but change them. It's so easy to change them and use them like this. Also, you can use the Enigma. It also is pretty good, but it's more or less used for special situations, not for damage. And the good thing about the Tech 22 is actually that it's very strong against normal enemies as well. So you'll mostly use it to get to a boss fight, and when you get to a boss fight you can change this to the Nebula. Not much else to discuss about here either. Just to kill stuff. Now those are the DPS builds, the main DPS builds, and this is again one of my favorite builds. It's not actually utility, it's just damage. It's the explosion build. You will need a lot of regeneration, more regeneration as you can see, Firestorm and feedback. You can basically use the Spore Shot all the time, and instead of the Time Wave you can also use other stuff, or instead of the Firestorm you can use the Fail Safe. Again, not a lot of things change the mod damage. It's kind of weird, but I tested it and it doesn't really matter that much. This one is kind of a good example of that. You can change it to more or less anything else, but it doesn't really change the way the build is played. And in fact, it's one of the things you can use the Meridian for. You can use the Screamer of the Meridian and then switch back to the Spore Bloom Spore Shot. It's just amazing. Sorry I don't have time to demonstrate all of this, but it's going to be hard to show all of that. Now, the Spirit Stone is a mix and match. It's not really the best. You can probably just use the Burden of the Destroyer here, but 50% damage when we're speaking about 1000 damage and above is not going to help you that much. And you'll not really be using your guns that much either, so I guess you can choose and match with whatever else you like in this case over here. But the point is to never use your guns, only the mod power. The Guardian. Of course, this is just your pure basic tank which has a lot of health. Just stack. By the way, you can get a better version of this pendant which has 25 health. It was improved in the patch as well. This was also improved because it only reduces stamina by 5 instead of 10. This works very well right now, so the Seng of A, Fear, Twisting Wounds, more or less the same. 200 HP almost. Let me see, yeah, it's maxed out. The funny thing about this is that you can actually have a lot of other things to help you with it. So this will be a lot of regeneration. You'll basically be unkillable. Wait, this is a mistake. You're not supposed to be here. You are supposed to be here. And of course it will be the same things. It will be armor. Let's actually put damage reduction over there. Armor. And of course health. I can find health, that is. Okay. So damage reduction, armor and health. Let's change that because that was not the right way. So this is a lot of healing. At 250 you will regain 1 relic back, so it's very hard to get killed while using all of this. Also keep in mind that I have not shared the point of using a relic because you'll get also bulwarks and some other stuff over here. It's a very fun build, almost impossible to kill on any difficulty. Okay, this is a bit of a discussion. This is the build I used to farm a lot. So as you can see, we have the Bobble, the Sage Stone, Follower, Seal of the Empress. More or less the same thing. Starkiller is very useful. A lot of survivability. So this is what I use on Aisha when you go on Apocalypse mode to the Red Throne. If you don't know what that is, well, I guess I can show you. Let me see if I have that. I don't have it. So everyone just farms on Apocalypse mode in the Aisha Red Throne room because they want to open those big chests, because the chests have two options, the smaller one and the big one, more ornate one. Plus there can be very good jobs from the enemies themselves at this point of the game, so yeah. You will want to open the secret compartment for the chest and the shotgun, which will pick up for the extra bubbles. Again, you'll use this build to farm relic scraps, relic fragments. As you can see, all of them are mythic. You will use this to farm and build up your other classes. So the second archetype can be anything else, because this is used to level up the archetype. You'll also need the experience from Maltuf Elixir. So basically you get scrap, experience for archetypes, relic fragments, items, consumables, anything else, anything related to farming. This is the build that is best to use in my opinion. And the last one will be of course the running build. So this is just to run around at max speed and have fun. Again, this is kind of weird. You'll have to change your usable consumables a lot more. So this is just max speed. Wolf, Momentum Driver, Rock of Anguish, Weightless, wait. Now, there is a compromise. You can use the Meteor Shard Ring, which is basically just running. Or you can use the other thing that will require you to slide. The difference in using this is that you have about 5 to 6% more movement speed than when you're using the Meteor Shard. But I guess it's up to you if it's worth it or not to use this one just for the... If you want to use and slide just to get 5 or 6% extra movement speed. Also, it's going to be very useful to traverse the levels, search dungeons, see if you have an encounter, see if you have a corrupted boss. This is probably going to be used in the current event where you're just running around. This is super useful because not a lot of enemies will see you. If there are a lot of enemies, just use this. If you're in a dungeon, just go past them. If they want to stop you, and they're really mean about it, just use the teleport option. So many good options. Anyway, that's the 8 builds that I've shown, and also a lot of utility. We have basically spoken about a lot of things, so this is basically 100 hours of playing the game at least. And I'm not sure if it was worth it. I hope it was worth it. Anyway, see you around. If you have any comments, let's talk in the comment section, because I really want to see what other people think. Bye bye.